The air in my parents' living room was thick, heavy, with an expectation I couldn't quite place. I sat on the edge of the floral sofa, knees pressed together, eyes scanning the circle of familiar faces. My brother Ethan leaned back with his arms crossed. Aunt Margaret clutched her tea like it was a shield, and my cousin Lily toyed with her phone, waiting for the show to start. At the center, my mother Evelyn sat upright, hands folded as if she were chairing a board meeting. She cleared her throat, the signal that everyone should listen. "Your family now," she said, her voice sharp and decisive. "Pay your share for a moment. I thought I'd misheard." Then my father Harold chimed in, nodding gravely. "Half your salary, that's how we've always done it. The one who earns the most contributes to the family fund." I blinked, trying to keep my face neutral. Half my salary. I worked long nights analyzing spreadsheets, surviving on caffeine and deadlines. And now they wanted me to hand over half my paycheck as if it were a tithe. Evelyn's gaze locked on mine. "It's tradition, honey. We take care of each other." My stomach tightened. Tradition. I remembered being 22, covering Ethan's tuition when his scholarships fell short, paying Aunt Margaret's medical bills, picking up the grocery tab more times than I could count. But this was different. This wasn't help. It was a demand. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't speak. Lily smirked. My father's jaw stayed firm, and my mother, always the conductor, waited for me to obey. I leaned back, letting a slow smile spread across my face. "Then you won't mind if I—" My words hung in the air, and for the first time their smug certainty flickered. I held on to that flicker, already knowing it would carry me into the storm that was about to follow. Their demand echoed in my ears long after I left that living room. Half my salary spoken, as if it were as natural as passing the salt at dinner. I drove home with my jaw clenched, and somewhere between the stoplights and the silence of my apartment, the memories began to surface. I was 20 when I first took on the role no one named, but everyone relied on. I juggled classes and a part-time job at the campus library, then moved to full-time shifts in data entry to cover my tuition. When Ethan's scholarship fell short, I wrote the check without hesitation. "You're the dependable one," my parents had said, with pride, their voices warm as if they'd given me an award. Later, when Aunt Margaret's health insurance denied her a critical treatment, it was my savings that bridged the gap. She called me her angel, but I noticed how quickly gratitude softened into expectation. The next time a bill came, she didn't ask if I could help. She asked how much I could give. Even Lily had benefited. When her car broke down in college, I co-signed the loan for a replacement. She promised to keep up with the payments, but within 6 months the burden slid onto my shoulders. Each time I stepped in, I told myself this was temporary, that one day the balance would even out. But it never did. The more I gave, the more they shaped me into the reliable one, the backbone, the wallet. I mistook their praise for love when it was really grooming. They wanted me steady so they could stay unsteady. Sitting at my desk now staring at the glow of yet another spreadsheet, the truth cut deeper than any demand at a family meeting. They had been building this moment for years, brick by brick, until asking for half my salary felt like the natural conclusion. And for the first time, I saw exactly how far they were willing to go. When I walked back into my parents' house the following week, the same faces gathered as if nothing had been settled. Evelyn perched in her chair, fingers laced together like she was presiding over some sacred ritual. Harold cleared his throat, his deep voice filling the room. "Everyone gives according to ability. That's how this family has always worked." The words landed heavy, but I noticed how no one else looked particularly weighed down. Ethan shifted in his seat, avoiding my eyes. "I don't earn enough," he mumbled a rehearsed line I'd heard too many times. Aunt Margaret, whose bills I'd once paid, lowered her gaze to the rug as if the pattern suddenly fascinated her. She didn't speak, but silence was its own answer. Then Lily leaned forward, her smile sharp and careless. "Come on, Claire makes enough for all of us." The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was cruel. It told me they had already decided I was the solution, not a member of the problem. I folded my arms, forcing my voice steady. "So you all contribute half too, right?" The silence that followed was colder than winter air. Ethan scratched at the back of his neck. Margaret coughed. Harold stiffened his jaw, tightening. Evelyn didn't flinch, her eyes drilling into mine as if daring me to keep pressing. That was my answer. They weren't united in sacrifice. They were united in expectation. My sacrifice, their gain. The family fund wasn't tradition. It was a carefully woven net designed to catch me and no one else. I let the pause linger, my smirk barely contained. Their unity was only a mask and I had just pulled at the seam. But if I'd torn a small hole, I knew I'd have to be ready for what would spill through it. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, and let the words slide out as if they were casual. If half my salary belongs to the family, then maybe I'll just quit my job altogether. No salary, no problem. The reaction was instant. Shock rippled across the room like a gust of cold wind. Aunt Margaret's teacup rattled in its saucer. Lily blinked, her smirk faltering. Even Harold's steady posture cracked, his shoulders sinking as though the foundation had been shaken. But it was Evelyn who snapped first. Her voice sliced through the silence. "You wouldn't dare!" I met her gaze. "Wouldn't I, if the money isn't mine? Why bother working myself to exhaustion for everyone else's comfort?" Her lips tightened, but I didn't wait for her reply. I stood, smoothed my coat, and walked to the door. My heels clicked against the hardwood, each step louder than the last. Not a single person stopped me, though I felt their eyes burn into my back. The night air hit me as I stepped onto the porch, cool and sharp against my flushed cheeks. For a moment, I thought I'd escaped alone until footsteps followed. "Clare," Ethan called softly. I turned to see him standing in the doorway, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the confident younger brother I once believed in had shrunk under years of excuses. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice uneven. "I didn't want it to go that far. Mom, Dad, they just... What?" I cut him off. "Decided my hard work was their inheritance." He winced but didn't argue. His apology hung between us, fragile, uncertain. For the first time, I wondered if one of them might finally see the machine for what it was, a system built on my back running only because I let it. I didn't answer him. Instead, I walked down the steps and into the night, leaving him standing in the doorway with words he couldn't take back. As I drove away, the glow of the house shrinking in my rearview mirror, my phone lit up with the first of many messages that would follow. By the next morning, my phone had become a weapon turned against me. The first text arrived before sunrise. "We raised you. The least you can do is give back." I silenced the screen and tried to focus on my coffee, but another buzz followed, then another. By noon, I had 12 missed calls and a string of voicemails, each more desperate than the last. Evelyn's voice dominated them all, sharp and commanding. "Don't embarrass this family. You'll regret this if you keep acting selfish." My father's tone was steadier, but it cut just the same. "Don't forget, we can cut you off if you walk away." Even Lily chimed in with a mocking text. "Hope that big paycheck keeps you warm when you've got no family left." I started saving everything, screenshots of texts, recordings of voicemails, even the emails that carried thinly veiled threats. Each one I labeled archived, tucked into a folder on my computer. A part of me hated the cold efficiency of it, but another part knew it was the only shield I had at work. I tried to bury myself in data reports, but Nathan noticed the tightness in my shoulders. He lingered by my desk after our meeting, lowering his voice. "You look like hell." "What's going on?" I debated brushing it off, but something in his steady gaze told me he wouldn't accept half an answer. So I told him maybe not every detail, but enough for him to understand why my phone buzzed like a hive I couldn't escape. His jaw clenched. "That's not family. That's predation. You need to protect yourself. Lock down your accounts. Double-check your credit. Make sure no one slipped their name next to yours." The thought sent a chill through me. I'd been so focused on the emotional blows that I hadn't considered the practical ones. Bank accounts, property records, all the invisible threads that tied my hard work to their reach. That evening, instead of going home, I drove to the bank. I changed my login credentials, added security alerts, and asked to flag any unusual activity. When I left, the autumn air felt crisper, cleaner, as if I'd taken one small step back toward control. but the messages didn't stop. If anything, they grew sharper, more frantic, more coordinated, like a pack circling prey. And late one night, when the buzzing finally went silent, I realized the quiet wasn't relief. It was the warning before the next strike. The call came in the middle of my lunch break. I almost ignored the unknown number, but something in my gut told me to answer. "Miss Harper, this is Sandra from First Raleigh Bank. We flagged an unusual attempt to withdraw $4,500 from your account. Did you authorize this transaction?" My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "No, absolutely not." Sandra hesitated, then continued carefully. "It looks like someone tried to link your paycheck deposit to a secondary account. The request was denied, but the attempt was made using your Social Security number." The words felt like ice water down my spine. Only a handful of people had ever seen my SSN, and my father was one of them. By the time I hung up, my pulse was racing. I opened my banking app, scrolling through the details until I saw the account name tied to the failed request Harper Family Fund. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone. They hadn't even bothered to hide it. That night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by paperwork, bank statements, tax forms, pay stubs, every document that proved my life was mine and mine alone. Outrage coursed through me, hot and blinding. But beneath it was something colder, clearer. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was fraud. I filed a fraud alert with the bank, locking my credit and demanding every safeguard they could provide. Then I pulled up Nathan's number and asked him to recommend a lawyer. By the next morning, I was sitting across from a woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper tone. "What they did is criminal," she said flatly after scanning my notes. "Trying to reroute your paycheck without permission, that's identity theft. And if you have proof it was your father, that's even stronger." I nodded, throat tight. Proof. The word hit hard because proof meant no more illusions, no more pretending this was just family pressure. It meant I had to decide whether to treat my family as loved ones or as criminals. And as I left her office, clutching a folder of forms and legal terms, I knew the choice was already made. I drove to my parents' house with the folder on the passenger seat, my fingers tight around the steering wheel. Every mile felt heavier. But I knew if I didn't confront them now, I'd carry the weight of silence forever. They were all there again, gathered like they had been before, as if these meetings had become some twisted tradition. Evelyn sat in her usual spot, regal and unyielding, while Harold leaned back like a man who had already won the argument. I laid the papers on the coffee table. "The bank called me. Someone tried to reroute my paycheck. They used my Social Security number." The account was labeled Harper Family Fund. Care to explain? Evelyn didn't flinch. She glanced at the documents, then looked back at me with a cool smile. "We're family, Claire. It's not stealing if it's ours." The room tilted for a moment. I waited for anyone to correct her, but the silence pressed in thick. Ethan lowered his head, shame burning on his face. Lily gave a nervous laugh, twirling her phone like this was some awkward joke that would pass. I looked from one to the other. "You've taken my help before my money, my time. And I kept giving, thinking it was love, thinking it was duty, but this is fraud, and I won't play along." Harold shifted his voice low. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I snapped the folder shut. "No, you made it harder the moment you decided I was the provider instead of the daughter. That role is finished. I don't owe you half my salary or any part of my life." The illusion cracked in that moment, the careful mask they'd worn for years slipping away. Evelyn's smile tightened brittle as glass. I stood and walked toward the door, and not a single person moved to stop me. Outside, the cold air felt sharper than before, and I knew it was only a matter of time before they struck back in a different way. 3 days passed in uneasy quiet before the envelope arrived. It was slipped under my apartment door, thick paper inside my name, typed neatly on the front. For a second, I thought it might be an olive branch, some clumsy attempted apology. Then I opened it. Inside were legal documents demanding that I surrender 40% of my income each month to the Harper Family Fund. My eyes skimmed the lines, incredulous. There was even a signature at the bottom, my own supposedly agreeing, but I knew my handwriting and this wasn't it. The loops were too wide, the strokes too heavy. Then I saw it the same flourish Aunt Margaret used whenever she signed birthday cards. She hadn't even bothered to disguise it. I laughed, but it wasn't humor. It was disbelief sharp enough to cut. They had forged my consent, dressed it up in legalese, and shoved it at me like I'd be too naive to question it. I scanned the documents, attached them to an email, and forwarded everything to my lawyer. Her reply came within the hour. "This isn't just fake, it's criminal. Bring them in and we'll take it from there." So I did. Sitting in her office, I placed the pages on her desk and she shook her head with a wry smile. "They've handed you their guilt in writing. This is textbook forgery, and if they used your personal information to draft it, identity theft." By evening, I was at the police station filing a report I never thought I'd file against my own blood. The officer's pen scratched across the form while my voice stayed steady, recounting every detail. When I stepped back into the night air, the weight in my chest felt different. Not lighter, not heavier, but sharper. The kind of weight that made it impossible to pretend anymore. And as I walked to my car, I knew the family's silence wouldn't last much longer. It didn't take long for word to spread. By the end of the week, Evelyn and Harold had been questioned by the police. The family's fortress, the one they'd built on fear and control, suddenly had cracks visible to everyone. The next time I saw them, the atmosphere was different. The confidence was gone, replaced with panic. Lily, who once mocked me, now turned her sharp tongue on Aunt Margaret. "I never signed up for this," she snapped, waving a copy of the forged papers. "Do you realize what you've dragged us into?" Margaret flushed red, stammering excuses. Evelyn tried to shush her, but the damage was done. The unity they prided themselves on was unraveling in front of me. Ethan sat off to the side, his usual smirk absent. When I stepped outside for air, he followed his voice low. "I told them this would go too far. I told them you wouldn't just roll over." His eyes were tired, his tone stripped of bravado. For a moment, I saw the brother I'd once believed in, the one I used to think would stand beside me, but the truth was harder. He hadn't stopped them, not until the consequences came knocking. Watching them all splinter, Lily's anger, Margaret's shame, Evelyn's denial, Harold's silence, I realized their so-called unity had never been about love. It had only ever been about control, and once control slipped from their hands, there was nothing left binding them together. The collapse was loud and messy, but it was also a warning. If they were willing to turn on each other, I knew they would soon turn all that fury back on me. The hearings moved faster than I expected. Within weeks, Harold and Margaret were fined for forgery and fraud. Evelyn's pride, her reputation as the dignified matriarch of Raleigh's tight-knit circles, crumbled the moment neighbors learned the truth. The woman who once held every room in her grip now avoided even the grocery store, her name spoken in whispers. I didn't celebrate their downfall. I didn't need to. Justice in its quiet way spoke louder than I ever could. Instead, I focused on building something of my own. I signed the lease on a small condo near the downtown arts district, sunlight pouring through wide windows that overlooked murals and coffee shops. It wasn't large, but it was mine, paid for with my work, my choices, my freedom. Nathan helped me move stacking boxes with his steady patience, slipping in small jokes when the silence grew heavy. My friends from work filled the fridge and left notes on the counter. Even Ethan showed up one weekend, standing awkwardly in the doorway before asking if I needed shelves assembled. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. Nights were quiet now. I cooked for myself, lit candles on the windowsill, and learned how silence could feel like peace instead of punishment. I thought often about the family meetings, the demands, the way they had tried to twist love into a contract. And then I thought about the people who stood by me without asking for a cent, who respected my no and celebrated my yes. Blood may bind, I realized, but it doesn't define. Respect does. Boundaries do. In the end, is family the people who share your name or the ones who honor your life? Looking back, I see the lesson carved in the cracks of my family's demands. I learned that love isn't a ledger tallying debts to be paid. It's not a contract signed in obligation, nor a role assigned without consent. For years, I gave believing it proved my worth, but their greed taught me boundaries are not selfish. They're survival. True family honors your limits, not exploits them. I discovered my strength in saying no and reclaiming my life from those who saw it as theirs to claim. Respect, not blood, defines kinship. The silence of my new home, once daunting, became my peace built on choices I made for myself. I learned to guard my heart and my labor, to trust those who stand by me without strings attached. The ordeal showed me that freedom comes from shedding expectations, not meeting them. In the end, I found family and friends who celebrated my victories, and in the quiet moments where I honored my own worth.
The text came through at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in my home office in Seattle reviewing acquisition proposals when my phone lit up with the family group chat notification. Mom, stop acting like you're important. We know you're struggling. Below it, a screenshot of my LinkedIn profile. Someone had updated my job title to founder and CEO 3 months ago when we closed Series D funding. I'd kept it vague intentionally, no company name, no details. Just the title. Aunt Linda, this is embarrassing, Sarah. Just admit you're unemployed. Uncle Robert, my niece, the CEO of her bedroom startup, face with tears of joy. My brother Tyler, Mom's right. Time to get a real job instead of playing entrepreneur. I set the phone down and went back to the term sheet from the automotive company wanting to license our battery technology. $340 million over 5 years. I highlighted a clause about intellectual property rights, made a note for our legal team, and moved to the next document. The texts kept coming. Tyler, seriously, Sarah, this is getting sad. You're 29. Stop with the fantasy. Mom, we're worried about you. This delusion isn't healthy. Dad, your brother has a real career at the bank. Maybe he can get you an interview for an administrative position. I'd heard variations of this for 7 years. Ever since I'd dropped out of Stanford's MBA program to work on lithium polymer battery compression in my apartment. They'd called it my science project. My expensive hobby. My quarter-life crisis. When I tried to explain the breakthrough, a new molecular bonding process that increased energy density by 340% while reducing charging time to under 8 minutes, Dad had interrupted. Sarah, that's nice, but when are you going to focus on something practical? That was 4 years ago. Since then I'd stopped trying to explain. I'd stopped attending family dinners where they'd ask when I was finally going to give up and get a real job. I'd stopped responding to Mom's weekly emails with job listings for entry-level positions that might be a good fit. I just kept working. My phone buzzed again. Aunt Linda. Remember when she said she was raising capital? Turns out it was just her maxing out credit cards, face with tears of joy. Uncle Robert. The whole family is embarrassed. Just stop. My cousin Jessica. My mom's book club keeps asking about Sarah the CEO. It's humiliating. I finished reviewing the automotive proposal, approved it with a digital signature, and forwarded it to our CFO. The deal would close next week. It would be our 7th major licensing agreement this quarter. The family group chat had gone quiet around midnight. I assumed they'd exhausted themselves and gone to bed. I was wrong. At 6:15 a.m., my phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately. Then Mom. Then Tyler. I was in the middle of a video call with our Japanese partners. It was evening in Tokyo, discussing the manufacturing facility we were opening in Osaka. I muted the call and texted the family chat. In a meeting. We'll call later. Tyler. A meeting, face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy. Mom. Stop lying, Sarah. This is getting pathological. The texts continued while I finished the Tokyo call, approved the Osaka facility budget, $180 million, and started my morning review of the overnight European markets. Our stock price had jumped 7% on rumors of the automotive licensing deal. At 7:30 a.m. my phone rang again. This time it was my sister Emily, who rarely participated in the family drama. You need to check Forbes, she said without preamble. Why? Just check Forbes. Dad's losing his mind. She hung up. I opened Forbes.com on my laptop. The homepage loaded. And there I was. Center of the screen. Professional headshot they'd taken 3 weeks ago. The headline, the 29-year-old who solved electric vehicles' biggest problem. Below it, Sarah Chen's revolutionary battery technology has attracted $2.8 billion in venture funding and partnerships with 7 major automotive manufacturers. Forbes exclusive interview inside. My phone exploded. Dad was calling. Mom was calling. Tyler, Aunt Linda, Uncle Robert, Jessica, cousins I hadn't heard from in years. All calling simultaneously. I let them ring. The article was comprehensive. They'd interviewed our investors, our partners, the automotive CEOs. They'd toured our facility, photographed our labs, verified our patents. They'd done 3 weeks of fact-checking before publishing. The article detailed everything. The breakthrough. The $50 million Series A in 2021. The $200 million Series B in 2022. The $600 million Series C in 2023. The $1.95 billion Series D 3 months ago that had valued the company at $2.8 billion. It included quotes from the CEO of one of the largest automotive manufacturers in the world. Sarah Chen's technology will define the next generation of electric vehicles. This isn't incremental improvement, it's revolutionary. There were photos of our 85,000 square foot facility in Seattle. Our team of 247 employees. The battery prototypes. The testing labs. And right there in the sidebar, Forbes 30 under 30, energy category. My phone had 47 missed calls. The family group chat had 89 new messages. I opened it. The tone had changed completely. Aunt Linda, I always knew Sarah was brilliant. Uncle Robert, so proud of my niece. Jessica, OMG, everyone at my office is talking about you. Tyler, hey sis, congrats. Always believed in you. Mom, we always supported your dreams, honey. I stared at the messages, my face neutral. Years of dismissal. Years of mockery. Years of being called delusional, unemployed, embarrassing. And now, because Forbes had confirmed what I'd been trying to tell them for 7 years, suddenly they'd always believed in me. Dad called again. This time I answered. Sarah. Honey. Why didn't you tell us? I tried, I said calmly. For 7 years. Well, you weren't very clear about it. We thought you were just working as a janitor? I quoted Mom's text from last night. Playing entrepreneur in my bedroom? Silence. Your mother and I are very proud, he said finally. We'd love to take you to dinner. Celebrate properly. I'm busy. Sir, come on. Don't be like that. Like what? Petty. We're family. I looked at my laptop screen. The Forbes article. The family group chat with 112 messages now. Screenshots of the article being shared. Relatives I hadn't heard from in a decade suddenly commenting with congratulations. I need to go, I said. I have actual meetings. Wait, Forbes mentioned partnerships with automotive companies. Which ones? Your brother works with several major. I hung up. By 9 a.m., my assistant had fielded calls from 6 different family members trying to reach me. Tyler wanted to discuss investment opportunities. Aunt Linda wondered if we were hiring for her son. Uncle Robert had business connections he wanted to share. Mom texted, Honey, I'm so sorry if we seemed unsupportive. We just wanted to protect you from disappointment. I didn't respond. At 10 a.m. I had a board meeting. Our lead investor from the Series A, the one who'd believed in the technology when it was just equations on a whiteboard, smiled at me across the conference table. Congratulations on the Forbes piece, she said. Well deserved. Though I'm guessing your phone's been blowing up. Family, I said simply. She nodded knowingly. Let me guess. Suddenly everyone remembers being supportive. Something like that. The board meeting proceeded. We discussed the automotive deals, the Osaka facility, preliminary conversations with 3 aerospace companies interested in the technology for electric aircraft. The CFO presented Q3 numbers. Revenue up 340%, operating at 23% profit margin, projected $890 million in revenue for the fiscal year. My phone buzzed constantly throughout. I'd silenced it, but I could see the notifications stacking up on my watch. After the meeting I finally looked. The family group chat had 247 messages. Tyler had sent a private message. Hey, I'm really sorry about last night. I didn't know. Can we talk? I'd love to learn more about what you're doing. Mom had sent an email with the subject line, Family Celebration Dinner, This weekend? Dad had left 3 voicemails. Aunt Linda had posted on Facebook, "So proud of my brilliant niece Sarah Chin. Always knew she'd do amazing things. Hashtag Forbes 30 under 30 hashtag proud aunt." I opened Facebook. Her post had 340 likes. The comments were full of people I'd grown up with, people who'd watched my family dismiss me at gatherings for years. Someone had commented, "Didn't you tell me last month she was unemployed?" Aunt Linda had responded, "Oh no. I said she was working on something entrepreneurial. So exciting to see it pay off." I closed Facebook. My assistant knocked on my office door. "Your mother's on line 3. She says it's urgent. Tell her I'm in meetings all day. She said she'd hold. Tell her I'll call her back." My assistant hesitated. "She's called 6 times already this morning." "I'm aware." She left, closing the door gently behind her. I looked at the Forbes article still open on my screen. 7 years. 7 years of working 90-hour weeks. 7 years of maxing out credit cards before we got funding. 7 years of being told I was wasting my potential, embarrassing the family, living in a fantasy. And now that Forbes had confirmed it, now that external validation had arrived, suddenly they wanted to celebrate. Suddenly they'd always believed. Suddenly I was worthy of their pride. My phone rang. "Emily." I answered. "Hey." "Mom's freaking out," she said. "She's been crying all morning." "About what?" "About, the things they said. She feels terrible. She texted me at 11:47 p.m. to tell me I was pretending to be important and that everyone knew I was struggling." Silence. "That was before Forbes," Emily said quietly. "I know. That's the point. Sarah, their family. They made a mistake. They didn't know. I told them. For 7 years I told them. They chose not to believe me until Forbes confirmed it. Can you blame them? You dropped out of Stanford, maxed out your credit cards, refused every job offer Dad got you. To build something revolutionary. Which I did." Emily sighed. "So what, you're never going to talk to them again?" "I didn't say that." "Then what?" I looked out my office window at the Seattle skyline. The facility where 247 people came to work every day, building the future of energy storage. The labs where we'd achieved what the industry said was impossible. "I'm just not interested in performing gratitude," I said, "for people who only value me now that I have external validation. They're proud of you. They're proud of the Forbes article. There's a difference." Emily was quiet for a moment. "Mom really is sorry." "Great. She can text that to the family group chat where she publicly humiliated me last night." "That's petty." "Maybe. But I have 7 years of receipts showing exactly how they treated me when they thought I was struggling. So forgive me if I'm not rushing to celebrate with them now that it's convenient." I hung up. At 2 p.m. my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Sarah Chin." A woman's voice, professional. Speaking. "This is Alexandra Morrison from Good Morning America. We'd love to have you on the show to discuss your Forbes feature and your revolutionary battery technology. Would you be available for a segment this Friday?" I paused. "This Friday. We're very interested in the story. Young entrepreneur, major breakthrough disrupting the automotive industry. Our audience would love to hear about your journey." My journey. The 7 years of doubt, mockery, and dismissal that would get edited into a 30-second inspirational montage about following your dreams. "Let me check my schedule and get back to you," I said. "Of course. I'll email you the details. We're thinking a 6-minute segment live from our New York studio. We'd cover travel and accommodation, of course." After she hung up, I sat staring at my phone. Good Morning America. The family group chat had 312 messages now. I opened it. Uncle Robert had posted another screenshot of the Forbes article. "My niece. Can't wait to tell everyone at the club about this." The club. The same club where he told people I was going through a phase, when I tried to explain the battery technology at a family wedding 3 years ago. "Tyler, Sarah, seriously, call me. I want to make things right." "Mom, honey, please. We love you. We're so proud. Let's talk." "Dad, your mother's very upset. This isn't like you to hold a grudge." I set the phone down. At 4 p.m. my CFO knocked on my door. The automotive licensing deal closed. $340 million confirmed. Wire transfer will hit tomorrow. Great. Thank you. She lingered in the doorway. You okay? You seem distracted. Family stuff. She nodded knowingly. The Forbes article? Yeah. Let me guess. Suddenly everyone wants to reconnect. Something like that. She smiled sympathetically. My family did the same thing when we went public. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had investment advice and business opportunities. She paused. For what it's worth, the people who believed in you when you were working out of your apartment, those are your real family. After she left, I thought about that. The early investors who'd taken a chance on theoretical technology. The first 10 employees who joined when we could barely make payroll. The partners who'd believed in the science when everyone else said it was impossible. Those people had seen the value before Forbes confirmed it. My family had needed external validation to believe what I'd been telling them for 7 years. At 6 p.m. I was about to leave when my phone rang. Mom again. I answered. Sarah, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all day. I've been working. Of course, honey. Of course. Listen, I need to apologize. Last night's text, I was worried about you. We all were. We thought you were struggling financially and just pretending everything was fine. We didn't know about the Forbes article or the company valuation or any of it. Because you didn't ask. You assumed. We wanted to protect you from disappointment. By calling me delusional, embarrassing, unemployed. Silence. We made a mistake, she said finally. A big one. We should have listened. We should have believed you. You should have respected me enough to take me seriously instead of waiting for Forbes to tell you I was legitimate. You're right. You're absolutely right. Can we talk about this? In person? This weekend? I looked at the email from Good Morning America on my screen. The interview request. The opportunity to tell my story to millions of people. I can't this weekend, I said. I have a television interview in New York. A television what? Good Morning America wants to do a segment. About the Forbes article and the technology. I could hear her processing this. That's wonderful, honey. Congratulations. Thank you. Maybe the weekend after? We could all get together. Celebrate properly. Maybe. Sarah, please. We love you. We're proud of you. We want to support you. Where was that support? I said calmly, when I was maxing out credit cards to fund the initial research. When I was working 90-hour weeks in my apartment. When I was explaining the breakthrough to anyone who'd listen. We didn't understand. Because you didn't try. You decided I was having a crisis instead of building something real. And nothing I said mattered until Forbes confirmed it for you. That's not fair. Isn't it? Read last night's texts. Tell me that's support. He was crying now. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. What do you want us to do? I don't know, Mom. Maybe start by acknowledging that your love and respect shouldn't require external validation. That your daughter's word should have been enough. I hung up. At 7 p.m. I was driving home when Tyler called. Hey, he said when I answered. I know you're pissed. You have every right to be. Okay. I was an asshole. For years. I made fun of your startup and called it a bedroom business and told everyone you were unemployed. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I waited. I guess I'm calling because I want to understand. Why didn't you just tell us? Show us proof? Make us believe you. I tried. No, I mean actually prove it. Show us the funding. The patents. The partnerships. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car. Tyler, I spent 7 years trying to explain what I was building. Every time someone interrupted to tell me to get a real job. Every family gathering someone made a joke about my expensive hobby. Every conversation ended with someone suggesting I apply for entry-level positions at real companies. But if you'd shown us the money wasn't the point. The technology was the point. The breakthrough was the point. And none of you cared enough to listen. We thought you were delusional. Because you assumed the worst instead of believing in me. Silence. So what now? He asked finally. You just cut us all off? No. But I'm not pretending that everything's fine. You don't get to mock me for 7 years and then celebrate with me the moment Forbes validates what I've been telling you all along. That's fair. He paused. For what it's worth, I really am proud of you. Even if I should have been proud all along. Thanks. After he hung up, I sat in my car for a long time looking at my phone. The family group chat had 389 messages now. Screenshots of the Forbes article. Congratulations. Pride. Relatives sharing the news with their own networks. And not one person had acknowledged that less than 24 hours ago, they'd been calling me delusional. I opened the email from Good Morning America and typed my response. Thank you for the invitation. I'd be happy to participate in Friday's segment. Then I opened a new text to the family group chat. I appreciate everyone's congratulations. For the record, the company has existed for 7 years, the technology has been in development for 8, and I've been trying to explain this to all of you since 2017. The only thing that changed yesterday was Forbes confirming what I'd been telling you all along. I'll be on Good Morning America this Friday discussing the breakthrough. You're welcome to watch. I hit send. The responses came immediately. Mom, we'll definitely watch, honey. So proud. Tyler, recording it for sure. Aunt Linda, can't wait to tell everyone. My niece on GMA. I set my phone to do not disturb and went inside. The house was quiet. 3 bedrooms, 2 offices, a kitchen I rarely used because I worked too much. I'd bought it 2 years ago with my Series B earnings. A modest place by tech CEO standards but comfortable. The family had never seen it. They'd never asked to visit. They'd assumed I was struggling, living in a studio apartment somewhere, barely making rent. I made tea and sat on the couch, thinking about Alexander Morrison's question. Would you like to share your journey? My journey. What would I even say? I built something revolutionary while my family called me delusional. I achieved something incredible despite my family's complete lack of support. I proved everyone wrong, but I shouldn't have had to. The truth was messier than a television segment could capture. The truth was 7 years of complexity, of hurt, of perseverance despite being dismissed by the people who were supposed to believe in me. And now they wanted to celebrate. Now they wanted to be proud. Now that Forbes had told them it was okay. My phone buzzed despite being on Do Not Disturb. Emergency contacts only. Emily, I know you're not taking calls. But I wanted to say you're right. They should have believed you without Forbes. And I'm sorry I didn't defend you more. I was proud of you the whole time. I just didn't say it loud enough. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, thank you. That means a lot. She responded immediately. For what it's worth, you don't owe them anything. Not forgiveness, not a celebration dinner, not a relationship if you don't want one. You built something amazing despite them, not because of them. Remember that. I set the phone down and looked around my quiet house. 7 years. $2.8 billion valuation. Revolutionary technology. Forbes feature. Good Morning America interview. And all I could think about was Mom's text from last night. Stop acting like you're important. We know you're struggling. The tea had gone cold by the time I picked up my phone again. I opened the family group chat. Dad had posted, looking forward to the GMA interview. Going to record it and show everyone at the office. The office. Where he'd been telling people for years that his daughter was figuring things out, and between opportunities. I started typing a response, then deleted it. What was the point? They'd seen Forbes. They'd believe Forbes. And maybe that was enough. Maybe I didn't need them to understand the 7 years of struggle. Maybe I didn't need them to acknowledge how wrong they'd been. Maybe I didn't need them to apologize for every dismissive comment, every mocking text, every assumption that I was failing. Maybe I just needed to keep building. The technology was real. The breakthrough was real. The $2.8 billion valuation was real. And I'd done it all without their belief. That, I thought, was its own kind of validation. Better than Forbes. Better than Good Morning America. Better than any external confirmation could ever be. I'd proven to myself that I could achieve something extraordinary despite everyone doubting me. And that was something no article could take away. My phone buzzed again. Another family member. Another congratulations. Another always knew you'd succeed. I set it to airplane mode and opened my laptop. There was work to do. The aerospace companies were waiting. The Osaka facility needed final approvals. The Q4 projections needed review. I had a company to run. A breakthrough to commercialize. A future to build. And whether my family believed in me or not, whether they celebrated me or not, that work would continue. Because I'd learned something important over 7 years. External validation was temporary. Self-belief was permanent. And I'd built a $2.8 billion company on the foundation of believing in myself when no one else did. That was a story worth telling. Even if it wasn't the neat, inspirational narrative Good Morning America wanted. It was the truth. And the truth, I'd learned, was more valuable than any amount of external validation could ever be. Even from Forbes. Even from family. Even from people who'd spent 7 years waiting for someone else to tell them I was worth believing in. I closed my laptop and looked out the window at Seattle's skyline. Tomorrow I'd fly to New York. I'd sit on a television set and talk about breakthrough technology and entrepreneurship and following your dreams. And I'd smile. And I'd be gracious. And I'd tell the inspiring story they wanted to hear. But I'd know the real story. The 7 years of struggle. The family who doubted. The text messages and mockery and dismissal. And I'd know that I'd succeeded despite all of it. Not because of Forbes. Not because of Good Morning America. But because I'd believed in the breakthrough when no one else did. And that belief had been enough. I'd learned to tune out Marcus's voice years ago. It was a survival skill, really, like learning to sleep through a neighbor's barking dog. Tonight, at his ridiculously expensive wedding reception, I was getting plenty of practice. "Sarah's great with kids, terrible with numbers," he announced to a cluster of his Goldman Sachs colleagues near the bar. His voice carried across the ballroom with that particular confidence that comes from 3 whiskeys and a captive audience. Always has been. Creative type, you know? Can't balance a checkbook to save her life. I sipped my champagne and adjusted the strap on my bridesmaid dress. The unflattering coral one his fiancée Emma had chosen specifically because it washed me out. Small victories for her, I supposed. Marcus had always been the golden child. Wharton MBA at 26. Vice president at 29. Now, at 33, he was marrying Emma Whitmore, whose father sat on half the boards in Manhattan. The wedding cost more than most people's houses, $400,000, according to Emma's loud complaints about keeping it intimate. I was 31, living in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, working as a freelance graphic designer. At least that's what the family believed. That's what I let them believe. "Remember when she tried to start that little Etsy shop?" my mother was saying to Emma's mother near the head table. Lost money on shipping costs for months before Marcus had to explain basic business to her. Bless her heart, but she's just not wired for finance. Emma's mother made a sympathetic noise. Well, not everyone can be a Marcus. The thing about being underestimated your entire life is that you learn to move quietly. While Marcus was building his career at Goldman Sachs, networking loudly and visibly, I was doing something else entirely. 10 years ago, after my graphic design degree, I'd started investing. Small amounts at first, $500 here, $1,000 there. I had a knack for spotting undervalued companies, particularly in the tech sector. Within 3 years, my portfolio had grown to $2 million. By year 5, $15 million. By year 8, $94 million. I kept it quiet. Invested through a family trust I'd set up under my grandmother's maiden name, Blackwell Capital Management. My family had never connected the dots. Why would they? I was creative Sarah, the artsy one. The one who needed Marcus to explain compound interest at Thanksgiving dinner while everyone nodded sympathetically. 6 months ago, Marcus had started his own venture capital firm, Hartley Investment Group. He'd raised $200 million from investors, including Emma's father and several of his Goldman colleagues. The firm was his pride and joy, his chance to step out of the corporate hierarchy and build something of his own. What Marcus didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Blackwell Capital Management owned 81% of Hartley Investment Group's voting shares. I'd invested $162 million through a series of shell companies and trust structures. Marcus thought his funding came from a consortium of European investors and a few anonymous American family offices. He had no idea that his baby sister, the financial idiot, controlled his entire company. "Sarah." Emma's voice cut through my thoughts. She was gesturing me over to the head table, her smile tight. "We need you for photos with the bridesmaids." I set down my champagne and made my way over, passing Marcus, who was now holding court with Emma's father and several board members from various companies. "The key to successful venture capital," Marcus was explaining with the authority of someone 6 months into the industry, "is knowing when to trust your instincts over the data. Sometimes you have to make bold moves." Emma's father nodded approvingly. That's the Marcus I know. Confident. Decisive. Unlike some people, Marcus added with a laugh, glancing in my direction. Sarah once asked me if stocks and bonds were the same thing. Can you imagine? The group erupted in polite laughter. I smiled and kept walking. The photographer arranged us on the grand staircase. Emma in the center, her 5 bridesmaids flanking her like pastel-colored sentries. I was positioned on the far end, partially hidden behind a marble column. Even in photos I was an afterthought. Sarah, try to smile naturally, the photographer called. You look like you're at a funeral. More laughter from the family members watching. After photos, I retreated to a quiet corner near the terrace doors. The reception was in full swing. A live band playing jazz standards, guests dancing on the marble floor, champagne flowing like water. Everything Marcus touched turned to gold, or so the family narrative went. My phone buzzed. A text from my actual business partner, Jennifer Chin, a mergers and acquisitions attorney I'd met 5 years ago. Jennifer, board meeting moved to Monday 10 a.m. Chairman confirmed attendance. All documentation ready. I typed back. Perfect. Thank you. Marcus's company had been hemorrhaging money for 3 months. His bold moves and instincts over data approach had resulted in 7 failed investments totaling $47 million in losses. The board, the Real board, the one I'd carefully assembled through Blackwell Capital, had been growing increasingly concerned. As majority shareholder, I'd been receiving detailed reports. Marcus was making decisions without proper due diligence, chasing flashy tech startups with charismatic founders and no viable business models. He was treating the firm like his personal playground, convinced his Goldman pedigree made him infallible. Last week he'd proposed investing $30 million in a cryptocurrency mining operation run by a 24-year-old dropout with a fake Stanford degree. The board had voted it down 6-1. Marcus had been furious, sending angry emails about old guard thinking and risk aversion killing innovation. He had no idea who actually controlled those votes. There's my little sister. Marcus appeared beside me, slightly unsteady on his feet. He'd loosened his tie, his face flushed from alcohol and attention. Why are you hiding in the corner? This is a party. Just taking a breather, I said. Beautiful wedding, Marcus. Congratulations. Yeah, Emma really outdid herself with the planning. He looked out at the crowd with satisfaction. This is just the beginning, you know. Hartley Investment Group is about to make some major moves. I'm in talks with 3 major pension funds right now. Could be looking at $500 million in additional capital by Q2. That's great, I said neutrally. You should let me manage some money for you, he continued, swirling his whiskey. I know you don't have much, but even a few thousand properly invested could grow significantly. I could teach you the basics. God knows you need the help. I appreciate the offer. I'm serious, Sarah. You can't just live hand-to-mouth your whole life doing little art projects. You need to think about retirement, building wealth. It's not too late to learn, even if finance doesn't come naturally to you. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne. Marcus grabbed 2 glasses, handing me one. To family, he said, raising his glass. And to finally understanding how the real world works. I clinked my glass against his. To understanding, I agreed. My phone buzzed again. This time a call. I glanced at the screen. Richard Blackwell, board chairman. Richard Blackwell wasn't actually related to me. He was a former JP Morgan executive I'd recruited to chair the Hartley Investment Group board. The surname was convenient for maintaining my cover. He only called when something required immediate attention. Excuse me, I need to take this, I said. Marcus waved me off, already turning back toward his guests. I stepped onto the terrace, the cool October air a relief after the stuffy ballroom. Richard. Miss Hartley. His voice was grave. I apologize for calling during your brother's wedding, but we have a situation. Marcus just sent an email to all investors announcing he's moving forward with the cryptocurrency mining investment. He's claiming board approval and says the deal closes Monday morning, $30 million wire transfer. My stomach tightened. He's lying about the board approval. I'm aware. I've already received calls from 3 concerned board members. This constitutes fraud, Ms. Hartley. He's misrepresenting board decisions to investors. If that money transfers, we're looking at potential criminal liability for the entire firm. I watched through the glass doors as Marcus laughed with Emma's father, completely oblivious. Has he been drinking tonight? Richard asked. Yes. That might explain the recklessness, but it doesn't excuse it. As majority shareholder, you need to make a decision. We can either remove him as CEO effective immediately, or we wait until Monday and risk him actually executing this fraudulent deal. Through the glass, I could see my mother showing wedding photos to relatives, Marcus the star of every image. My father stood with his arm around Marcus's shoulder, beaming with pride at his son, the financial genius. Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning, I said quietly. 9 a.m. I'll be there in person. You're sure? That will reveal. I'm sure. Notify all board members and legal counsel. Marcus needs to be there too. He'll want to know who called the meeting. Tell him the truth. Tell him the majority shareholder called it. Let him spend tonight wondering who that is. Richard was quiet for a moment. I'll send the notifications within the hour. See you tomorrow, Miss Hartley. I ended the call and stood on the terrace, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The city glittered like scattered diamonds, beautiful and indifferent. Back inside, the band was playing The Way You Look Tonight. Marcus was dancing with Emma, spinning her under his arm while guests applauded. He caught my eye and grinned, pointing at me with his free hand like I was in on the joke, like we were all celebrating his success together. I raised my champagne glass in response. My phone buzzed with Richard's email. Emergency board meeting. Sunday, October 15th, 9 a.m. Hartley Investment Group offices. Called by majority shareholder, Blackwell Capital Management. Required attendance. All board members, CEO Marcus Hartley, legal counsel. I watched as Marcus's phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He ignored it, lost in the moment with his new wife. It buzzed again. And again. Finally, he pulled it out, his smile fading as he read the screen. He stopped dancing, causing Emma to stumble slightly. She said something to him, concerned, but he wasn't listening. He was staring at his phone like it had just betrayed him. He looked around the ballroom wildly, then his eyes found me on the terrace. Even through the glass, I could see the confusion on his face. Who the hell is Blackwell Capital? He mouthed. I simply smiled and raised my glass again. Marcus extracted himself from Emma and strode toward the terrace doors, yanking them open. What the hell is this? He thrust his phone at me. Emergency board meeting? Tomorrow morning? During my honeymoon weekend? Who does Blackwell Capital think they are? I don't know, Marcus. What does the email say? It says they own 81% of voting shares. His voice was rising, drawing attention from nearby guests. That's impossible. I know every major investor in my firm. Maybe you don't know them as well as you think. This is ridiculous. I'm calling Richard right now. He started dialing, but I reached out and gently pushed his phone down. Marcus, it's your wedding night. Don't you think this can wait until tomorrow? Wait. Sir, this is my company. Some mysterious shareholder can't just call emergency meetings and demand my presence. He ran his hand through his hair, agitated. This is probably one of the European investors getting cold feet about the crypto deal. I'll straighten it out tomorrow, but this is totally unprofessional timing. Emma appeared at his elbow. Marcus, what's wrong? Everyone's asking why you stopped dancing. Work stuff, he muttered. Nothing I can't handle. On your wedding night? Emma's voice went cold. Seriously. It's just a meeting tomorrow morning. I'll deal with it quick and then we'll head to the Maldives as planned. You're supposed to be on our honeymoon. I know, babe, but this is important. Some investors throwing their weight around, probably trying to block my crypto deal. I just need to remind them who actually runs the company. I sipped my champagne, saying nothing. Marcus turned back to me. You don't know anything about Blackwell Capital, do you? They're not one of your artsy Brooklyn friends trying to invest or something. I barely have enough money for rent, remember? How would I know major investors? He nodded, satisfied with this logic. Right. Sorry. I'm just stressed. This is supposed to be the happiest day of my life and now I have to deal with board politics. Maybe they have legitimate concerns, I suggested carefully. About what? I've made 7 investments. So they haven't all paid off immediately. That's how venture capital works. You take risks, you learn, you adjust. But these old guard board members don't understand that you have to trust your instincts. Maybe instincts aren't enough. He laughed, the patronizing sound I'd heard my entire life. Sarah, no offense, but you don't really understand how high-level finance works. These are complex decisions that require years of experience and a sophisticated understanding of market dynamics. Of course, I said. What do I know about money? Exactly. He seemed relieved that I understood my place. Look, I love you, sis, but we live in different worlds. You do your art thing, I do the finance thing. That's just how we're wired. Emma tugged at his arm. Marcus, can we please get back to our wedding? Yeah, you're right. He pocketed his phone and smoothed his jacket. Tomorrow morning I'll sort this out, remind everyone who the CEO is, and then we'll be on a plane to paradise. Simple. They walked back into the ballroom, Marcus's arm around Emma's waist. Within minutes he was dancing again, laughing with guests, the picture of confidence. I stayed on the terrace until the reception ended, watching my brother celebrate his perfect life while his perfect company crumbled beneath his feet like sand. Sunday morning arrived cold and gray. I stood outside the Hartley Investment Group offices at 8:45 a.m., wearing a charcoal business suit I'd purchased specifically for this occasion. My leather portfolio contained detailed financial reports, legal documents, and 10 years of investment records. The office building was eerily quiet on a Sunday. Richard met me in the lobby. Miss Hartley. He extended his hand. The other board members are already upstairs. Marcus arrived 10 minutes ago. He's agitated. I imagine he is. We rode the elevator to the 23rd floor in silence. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see 6 board members seated around the table. Executives from various investment firms, all personally recruited by me through Blackwell Capital. All loyal to the majority shareholder, not to Marcus. Marcus stood at the head of the table, his back to the door. Even from behind I could see the tension in his shoulders. He was still in his honeymoon clothes, jeans and a polo shirt, clearly having come straight from his hotel. Richard opened the conference room door. Marcus spun around. Finally. Richard, what the hell is? He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me behind Richard. Sarah? What are you doing here? Miss Hartley is here at my invitation, Richard said calmly. Your invitation? Richard, I appreciate that you're trying to include family, but this is a serious business meeting. Sarah doesn't understand. Please, everyone sit, Richard interrupted, gesturing to the chairs. I took a seat at the opposite end of the table from Marcus. The board members watched with careful expressions, already briefed on what was about to unfold. Marcus remained standing. Someone want to tell me what this is about? I got your email saying Blackwell Capital owns 81% of my company's voting shares. That's impossible. I personally secured every major investor. I know exactly who has equity in this firm. Do you? I asked quietly. He looked at me, irritated. Sarah, I know you're trying to be supportive, but the adults need to talk business right now. Maybe Richard can call you an Uber. Sit down, Marcus, Richard said, his tone brooking no argument. Something in Richard's voice made Marcus pause. He looked around the table at the board members, none of whom were meeting his eyes. Slowly he sank into his chair. Marcus, Richard began, what do you know about Blackwell Capital Management? They're a family office or consortium that invested $162 million in Hartley Investment Group during our series of funding. European-based, I thought. Anonymous investors who wanted passive involvement. Incorrect, Richard said. Blackwell Capital Management is a private investment firm based in New York. It's been operating for 10 years, managing a portfolio currently valued at approximately $340 million. The principal investor and sole decision-maker is sitting at this table. Marcus's eyes darted around the room. Which one of you? Me, I said. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus stared at me. Then he laughed, a short, disbelieving bark. That's not funny, Sarah. It's not a joke, I said. I opened my portfolio and slid a document across the table. This is the corporate structure of Blackwell Capital Management. That's my signature as founder and principal. These are the incorporation documents from 10 years ago. Marcus picked up the papers, his hands shaking slightly. This is, no, this is some kind of mistake. You don't have this kind of money. You're a freelance designer living in Brooklyn. I'm a private investor who also does freelance design work, I corrected. The design work is a hobby. The investing is my actual career. That's impossible. Where would you get $340 million? I started with $500 10 years ago. Made some good investments in undervalued tech companies. Reinvested the returns. Compound growth over a decade. Richard slid another document across the table. These are the investment records, Marcus. Every transaction, every return, every acquisition. All verified by our legal team. Marcus was flipping through papers frantically. But, you asked me to explain stocks to you at Thanksgiving. You said you didn't understand compound interest. I lied, I said simply. I've been lying for 10 years. It was easier than dealing with the family's reaction. So you've been secretly rich this entire time? While we all thought you were struggling. While you all insisted I was struggling, I corrected. I never said I was. You all just assumed. One of the board members, Patricia Chin from Sterling Ventures, cleared her throat. Mr. Hartley, perhaps we should focus on the matter at hand. The cryptocurrency investment. Marcus's face went red. Don't tell me this is about that. The crypto mining operation is a solid opportunity. 24% projected annual returns. Run by a man with a fake Stanford degree, I said, sliding another document across the table. Our legal team did a background check. His name isn't even real. The entire operation is a Ponzi scheme. You were about to wire $30 million into a fraud operation. That's not. I vetted him. He had references. Fake references, Patricia said. From fake companies. If you'd done proper due diligence. I did do due diligence. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. I've been doing this for 20 years. I worked at Goldman Sachs. I know how to evaluate investments. You've been CEO of this firm for 6 months, Richard said quietly. And in that time, you've lost $47 million on 7 failed investments. The board voted against the cryptocurrency deal, but you sent an email to all investors last night claiming board approval. That's fraud, Marcus. The color drained from Marcus's face. I was going to get approval. I just needed to convince you all that. You lied to investors, I said. You misrepresented a board decision to close a deal you knew was rejected. That's securities fraud. If that wire transfer had gone through, you'd be facing criminal charges. Marcus looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You're behind this. You're trying to sabotage me. I'm trying to save the company. Your company. The one you're destroying with reckless decisions and ego-driven investments. Ego-driven. He laughed bitterly. This is rich coming from you. You've been sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars lying to the family, playing some kind of sick game. I wasn't playing a game. I was protecting my privacy and building a successful investment career while you all dismissed me as incompetent. We never dismissed you. Marcus. Kept my voice level. Yesterday at your wedding you told your guests I didn't know the first thing about money. You've spent 10 years explaining basic financial concepts to me like I'm a child. Mom tells people I tried to run a business but failed. Dad introduces me as the creative one, with a tone that makes it clear I'm the family disappointment. That's not, we were just being honest about what you believed, I finished. And I let you believe it because it was easier than explaining that I'd built an investment portfolio worth more than Dad's entire retirement fund by the time I was 26. Another board member, James Whitmore, yes, Emma's father, spoke up. Marcus, I think we need to address the immediate issue. Ms. Hartley, as majority shareholder, what action do you want to take? Marcus's head snapped toward James. Wait, you knew about this? You knew Sarah was the majority shareholder. I learned this morning, James said carefully. Along with everyone else. But you're on her side. You're all on her side. Marcus looked wildly around the table. This is a coup. You're trying to steal my company. It's not your company, I said quietly. It's my company. I own 81% of voting shares. You own 12%. The remaining 7% is distributed among smaller investors. I have controlling interest, Marcus. I always have. He stared at me, his chest rising and falling rapidly. So what, you're going to fire me? Take over as CEO? You don't know anything about running a venture capital firm. You're right, I agreed. Which is why I'm not taking over as CEO. Richard has agreed to step in as interim CEO while we conduct a national search for someone with actual experience in venture capital management. No. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. No, absolutely not. This is my firm. I built this. You pitched the idea, I corrected. I funded it. And you've been running it into the ground for 6 months. I won't accept this. I'll fight you. I'll sue for. For what? Patricia interrupted. Ms. Hartley is the majority shareholder exercising her legal rights. You signed operating agreements that explicitly allow for CEO replacement by majority vote. The board votes 7-0 in favor of your removal, effective immediately. Marcus looked at each board member in turn. None of them met his eyes. James, he said desperately, turning to his new father-in-law. You can't let this happen. We're family now. James shifted uncomfortably. Marcus, I'm a fiduciary board member. I have a legal obligation to act in the company's best interests, not personal interests. The financial reports are concerning. The fraudulent investor communication is potentially criminal. I don't have a choice. So that's it. Marcus's voice cracked. After everything I've done, everything I've built, my own sister destroys it all? I'm not destroying anything, I said. I'm saving it. You're a smart guy, Marcus. But you're not ready to run a venture capital firm. You need more experience, more humility, more willingness to listen to people who know better than you. People like you, he spat. My little sister who lived in a dump in Brooklyn and couldn't figure out Etsy shipping costs? I never lived in a dump. I lived in a modest apartment because I was investing my money instead of spending it on appearances. And I deliberately lost money on Etsy shipping costs because it was easier to let you explain basic business to me than to reveal that I was managing a 9-figure investment portfolio. Richard stood. Marcus, you have 2 options. You can resign gracefully as CEO, maintain your equity position and transition to an advisory role. Or we can terminate you for cause based on the fraudulent investor communication, which would void your equity and potentially expose you to legal liability. Marcus's phone buzzed. He looked at it, his face going even paler. That's probably Emma wondering where you are, I said. You're supposed to be on a plane to the Maldives. How am I supposed to? He stopped, swallowing hard. How am I supposed to tell her I got fired from my own company? By my little sister. By the majority shareholder, I corrected. And you can tell her the truth, that you made mistakes, that the board took action to protect the company, and that you'll figure out your next steps. She's going to be devastated. Her father is on this board. James winced but said nothing. I'll give you until Tuesday to make your decision, I said, gathering my documents. Resign voluntarily or be terminated for cause. Those are your options. Marcus stood frozen, his hands gripping the edge of the table. You've been planning this. All along you've been waiting for me to fail. No, I said honestly. I was hoping you'd succeed. I invested $162 million in your firm because I believed in the concept. But you've proven you're not ready to run it. Maybe someday you will be. But not today. I stood and walked toward the door. Richard and the board members followed, leaving Marcus alone at the head of the empty conference room table. In the elevator, Richard cleared his throat. That was difficult. I'm sorry you had to do that to family. He's still my brother, I said. But the company's survival is more important than his ego. What will you do now? Catch a flight to Tokyo. I have another investment opportunity to evaluate. A robotics firm that actually has a viable business model. And your family? I thought about that. I'll tell them the truth eventually. When I'm ready. When they're ready to hear it. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby. Through the glass walls I could see the city waking up. Coffee shops opening, people walking dogs, the Sunday morning rhythm of Manhattan. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, I hate you. I replied, you're angry. I understand. But you'll be okay. Another buzz. Everyone will know you destroyed me. Everyone will know I saved a company you were driving into the ground. There's a difference. A longer pause. Then, Mom and Dad will never forgive you. I typed. Probably not. But I didn't do this for their approval. I silenced my phone and walked out into the October morning. Behind me, 23 floors up, my brother was probably still standing in that conference room, trying to understand how his clueless little sister had outplayed him so completely. The thing about being underestimated is that people never see you coming. And by the time they do, it's already too late.